Ever wonder what happens when history gets weird? Like, really weird. From soldiers who didn't know the war was over to a sandwich that accidentally sparked a global conflict, we're diving deep into the most mind-blowing, jaw-dropping, what-the-heck moments in military history. These are the decisions so insane, you'll question if you're watching a documentary or a Hollywood blockbuster. Get ready, because we're counting down the top 10 most WTF decisions in World War history. Starting at number 10, Hiro Noda, the soldier who literally missed the memo that World War II had ended. For 29 years, this Japanese intelligence officer kept fighting in the Philippine jungle. He saw the leaflets drop from planes announcing the surrender in 1945, but dismissed them as enemy propaganda. He survived on bananas and coconuts, conducting guerrilla warfare against local police, believing he was still following orders. It wasn't until 1974, when his former commanding officer was flown in to personally relieve him of duty, that Onoda finally laid down his arms. Imagine emerging from the jungle to find a world with color TV, space travel, and rock and roll. Talk about a culture shock. At number 9, we have Italy's strategic masterpiece, invading itself. Okay, not literally, but it's close. In 1943, Italy was part of the Axis powers with Germany. But after a series of defeats, they had a change of heart. They signed an armistice with the Allies and, in a shocking twist, declared war on their former bestie, Germany. The result? Chaos. German forces already in Italy suddenly became an occupying army, and Allied troops had to fight their way up the Italian peninsula against their old foes. It was a bizarre, bloody game of musical chairs where Italian soldiers found themselves fighting alongside the very people they were fighting against just weeks before. Sliding into number 8 is how the Nazis fumbled their chance at the atomic bomb. In the 1930s, Germany was a world leader in nuclear physics. But when the Nazis came to power, many of their brightest minds, including brilliant scientists like Albert Einstein, fled the country. These very scientists then warned the United States about Germany's potential to build a nuclear weapon, which directly led to the creation of the Manhattan Project. So, in one of the biggest own goals in history, the Nazis' ideology drove away the exact people who could have given them the ultimate weapon, and instead handed that advantage directly to their enemies. At number 7, we've got the Ghost Army. During World War II, the U.S. assembled a top-secret unit of artists, designers, and sound engineers. Their mission? To fool the Germans with an army of illusions. They used hundreds of inflatable rubber tanks, cardboard airplanes, and giant speakers blasting the sounds of troop movements to create phantom divisions. They could make a single platoon sound like an entire armored brigade. The deception was so effective that they repeatedly drew German forces away from real Allied invasion points, including the D-Day landings. They fought a war not with bullets, but with creativity and pure, unadulterated trickery. Marching in at number 6 is the legend, Mad Jack Churchill. This British Army officer thought machine guns and grenades were a bit boring. His weapons of choice in World War II: a longbow, a basket-hilted Scottish broadsword, and his trusty bagpipes. He is credited with the last recorded longbow kill in a major war and famously captured 42 German soldiers and a mortar crew armed only with his sword. His personal motto was, "Any officer who goes into action without his sword is improperly dressed." This guy wasn't just a soldier, he was a real-life action hero who walked straight out of a medieval epic and onto the battlefields of the 20th century. Coming in cold at number 5 is Operation Barbarossa. In 1941, Hitler decided to invade the Soviet Union, ignoring a non-aggression pact and the lessons of history. He expected a quick victory before the brutal Russian winter set in. Spoiler alert, he was wrong. The German army, unprepared for the freezing temperatures, found their tanks seizing up, their supplies frozen solid, and their soldiers suffering from extreme frostbite. It was a mirror image of Napoleon's disastrous invasion over a century earlier. The Russian winter proved to be the Soviet Union's most effective general, halting the German advance and turning the tide of the war on the Eastern Front. At number 4, a story that sounds like an action movie stunt, a pilot shooting down a jet with a pistol. During the Korean War, U.S. Marine pilot Captain Jesse Fulmer's Corsair was hit by anti-aircraft fire. As he struggled to regain control, an enemy MiG-15 jet flew past him. In a moment of sheer desperation and adrenaline, Fulmer pulled out his service Colt .45 pistol, aimed out his cockpit window, and fired. Miraculously, his bullets struck the enemy pilot or a critical system, and the MiG spiraled out of the sky and crashed. It remains one of the most improbable aerial victories in history, proving that sometimes all you need is a little bit of luck and a whole lot of guts. Holding strong at number 3 is the refusal to surrender at Dunkirk. In 1940, over 300,000 Allied soldiers were trapped on the beaches of Dunkirk, France, surrounded by the German army. Surrender seemed inevitable. The world held its breath. But instead of laying down their arms, an unprecedented decision was made: a mass evacuation. A fleet of over 800 vessels, from naval destroyers to tiny fishing boats and private yachts, sailed across the English Channel under constant fire to rescue the stranded men. It was a desperate, chaotic, and heroic gamble that saved the bulk of the British Army, allowing them to fight another day. This was not a retreat, it was a miracle. Now for number 2, the sandwich that started World War I. This is the ultimate example of the butterfly effect. In 1914, Gavrilo Princip, a Serbian nationalist, was part of a group trying to assassinate Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary. Their initial attempt with a bomb failed, and the Archduke's motorcade sped away. A dejected Princip went to a nearby deli to buy a sandwich. Meanwhile, the Archduke's driver took a wrong turn and, while trying to reverse, stalled the car right in front of that exact deli. Princip looked up from his sandwich, saw his target sitting just feet away, and took his shot. That single, ridiculously coincidental moment triggered a chain reaction that plunged the entire world into war. And finally, the number 1 most WTF fact in war history: the Korean War never officially ended. After 3 years of brutal fighting that claimed millions of lives, an armistice was signed in 1953. But an armistice is just a ceasefire, not a peace treaty. Technically, North and South Korea are still at war, locked in a frozen conflict for over 70 years. The border between them, the DMZ, remains one of the most heavily fortified places on Earth. Every time you hear about tensions on the Korean Peninsula, remember it's because this massive, world-altering conflict was simply put on pause, not resolved. The papers were never signed. History is way crazier than you think. If you enjoyed this dive into the bizarre, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more insane history facts. See you next time.